Hello all, I am Neil, and today I'll be showing you how to set up a DHCP server on a 2008 server system. I'll also show you how to set up the scopes and exclusions, leases, and setting up a client on the DHCP. Now, if you remember, a DHCP server is a server that issues IP addresses on a network for client computers. What we're going to do is I already have a 2008 server set up, Active Directory, and it is also a domain controller. Okay, let's begin. First, let me log into this server. Okay, now we are onto the server, and let's also set up a client computer. I already have a client computer set up here. This is a Windows Vista. This client computer is already on the same network as the server, and this client computer has a static IP. But after we set up the DHCP server, we will change it to automatic and test the DHCP addresses. So let's go back to the server. Okay, so let's set up DHCP. We need to add a role. Click on your management screen, add a role, server roles. On this window here, as you can see, this is the Active Directory. There's a DNS running. We just need to click on DHCP server, and it will begin to add the features that is needed for this DHCP server. On the left here, we have features that we will be installing. You can click next. Introduction to DHCP server. Click next here. This is your network binding connections. One or more of your connections having a static IP address were detected. This is actually the IP address of your network card on your server. So it actually binds with this address. So it may be ticked. Leave it as the default. And as you can see, it's IP version 4. Click next. This screen takes you to the IP version 4 DNS settings. Now, because DNS is already set up on this server, you just double check your settings here. This domain is neil.com, and your preferred DNS is the IP address of the domain or the server. If you want, you can validate by clicking this button here to validate your DNS service. As you can see, when I click validate, it's valid, so it's the DNS connection is true. Just click next. IP version for Wins settings. We can leave this as a default. Here we come to setting up of the DHCP scope. Now your DHCP scope is a range of addresses that will be distributed on your network for use on your network. Now your scope must be in the range of your network. Click add. You can name the scope. You can call it scope 1. You have a start IP address, you have an end IP address, your subnet mask, your default gateway, and this can be as default. Your start IP address, we're going to start with your network 0.1 and we're going to go up to 254. And your ending IP address is going to be as you can see, this is a class C network. Put in your subnet mask. Okay, your default gateway can be optional. Activate your scope. Subnet type. Leave the other default information. Click OK. Now your scope 1 is now set up. Click next. In our test situation, we won't be using version 6 addressing, so we can disable version 6 addressing for now. Click next. This is authorize your DHCP server. Just double check your settings here. You leave it on use current credentials. And you can leave this as your default. The credentials of the user, current user, will be used to authorize this DHCP server in your domain. And click next. This screen confirms installation. You can check your settings here. DNS server, name of your scope, IP address range, IP version 4 disabled, activate scope, authorization, and click install. The DHCP server will now be installed onto your server. This may take a little while, so I'm gonna fast forward this clip a little for you. Okay, here we go. As you can see, installation has succeeded. You have a little Windows update not enabled. Okay, that's okay. So we're going to click close. Now your DHCP server is installed. What we can do is click on your start button, administrative tools, and you can click on your DHCP here, and we check on DHCP here. As you can see, click the arrow down, IP version 4, and as you can see, this is your DHCP service. And notice the green arrow. That means to say that it's authorized and it is activated. If you click on address pool, this is your address pool from 01 to 0254. When it begins to give out leases, you will see your leases here and address leases. You can set reservations and you have scope options. Okay, so let's set up an exclusion, some exclusion addresses. What we want to do, we want to exclude a certain range. We're going to exclude the 0.1 to the 0.10 range because we want to keep those IP addresses. We do not want to issue those IP addresses automatically. We want to keep it for servers and other equipment that may be on your network that you may need those IP addresses. So let's click on address pool, right click, click new exclusion range. You can start your exclusion range. 1 10 0x, and you can close this button. So you can see now you have exclusion range of 1 to 10. Okay, now that our DHCP is active, let's do some tests. First, okay, let us test the leasing of these DHCP addresses to client machines. Okay, I'm going to open a client. I have two clients here. I have a Windows Vista client that I logged on to with a normal user account, and I have a Windows 7 client that I logged on to using an administrator account, because there are some features in the for instance, in network properties, you may need administrator access to change the settings. So let's go into the Vista. Now let me show you the static IP that is set up for this computer. Properties. As you can see, a normal user, once you are on the domain, and depending on your access, it will ask for administrator account to access the network properties. So let's log on as an administrator. So now we can go into the properties, and I just want to show you that this computer is set up using a static IP. Now we're going to change it to obtain an IP address automatically and obtain a DNS server address automatically, and we click OK. click close. Now this client machine should receive an IP address from the DHCP server. Let's just wait for it. If we open, let's see, okay, if we open the server and we look at address releases, as you can see, it's send out 0.11 release to the Vista computer. Okay, let's just double check something here. Let's do an IP config on this computer, the client computer. Okay, as you can see, we are not getting an IP address. So let's check back our network settings. Okay, this seems to be okay here. Okay, here we can see the IP address that is issued to the Vista client computer. If we go into the Vista computer, we can do our IP config. And you can see the IP address of the Vista computer has been issued as 0.11. And here it is, release. Let's set up a second client. Let's set up the Windows 7 client. Click on adapter settings. Now I logged on with my administrator account on this client computer, so I have already access to the network card properties. Now what we're going to do, we're going to change from manual to automatic, obtain IP address automatically, and same goes with the obtain DNS server address automatically. Click OK, click close. And let's wait a while. Okay, Let's do an IP config. As you can see, this client has received an IP address 0.12. If we go into our server and we check our leases, press F5, as you can see, it has issued a 0.12 to my Windows 7 client. Okay, I'm going to show you how to release and renew IP address on your client. First, let's set the lease time. Click on your scope here, click on Actions, Properties. This is in your 2008 server mining. Lease duration for DHCP clients. Now you can set this to 6 days, which is usually the default, but for our test I'm going to set it to 1 minute because I want to release the IP and show you how we can get back the IP. So I'm going to click Apply, click OK. Now let's go back to our Windows 7 client computer. Now let's give this 1 minute. Let's give it 1 minute. So I'm gonna fast forward this part of the video. Okay, so a minute has passed. So the DHCP server should stop leasing addresses at this time, but what we need to do, we need to release the IP address from this Windows 7 client and renew it. So let me show you the IP address of this computer right now. Let's do an IP config. Okay, as you can see, the IP address is 0.12. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to release the IP and see if releases. The command for that would be IP space / release config / that's release. Now as you can see, if I do an IP config now, as you can see, the computer loses its IP address. This is your default IP. It doesn't get an IP. So press the arrow up and let's try what we'll need to do. We need to start some leases again. Go back into the scope, action, properties, and let us put the scope back to 6 days default. Click apply. Now we can go back to the client machine and we can do an IP renew, and let's see if it's gonna renew an IP address. Let's check this again. Okay, we're still not getting an IP. Let's release and renew it, and let's see. Okay, and let's do a renew. And as you can see, it has gotten an IP address 012. So what we did here, we did a release and renew. We set the release time to 1 minute, and we lost the IP. We set back up the release time on the server, and on the client we did a release and renew, and we got back our IP address. Okay, so this is how you set up a DHCP server on a 2008 computer, and set up scopes, exclusions, test releases, set up clients. Okay, thank you for watching.